How much do you need to retire at age 60? So in this video, I want to discuss how somebody could take an inventory of where they currently are right now, how to specifically understand what their goals are, and then how to effectively accomplish those goals, understanding where your current situation is, where do you want to be, and then when you hit that retirement stage at this age 60 marker going forward, how do you make sure that you're leveraging your assets effectively so that you do not run out of money before the date of death. So the first step is going to be taking an inventory of your current situation. So what are your assets? What are all your different accounts? Where individuals, where I have this broken down into qualified accounts, Roth accounts, non-qualified, and other, what do I mean by that? Well, qualified accounts are typically pre-tax qualified retirement accounts. So these are monies you never paid taxes on. They're monies that you set aside, such as in an employer-sponsored plan, like a 401k account. You might have set up a traditional IRA for yourself or rolled over a 401k plan into a traditional IRA. But ultimately, what's happening, if you think of this conceptually like a bucket, all the monies are growing with the power of compound interest. It's growing tax deferred in that bucket so that when it comes time that you do hit that age 59 and a half, do hit that age 60 marker, any dollar that you're trying to pull out of this account is going to be fully taxable. So what is the current dollar amount that's sitting in this qualified these qualified accounts? So it could be a combination of a couple different things based on who you used to work for. You might have a 401k account, an old 401k account sitting there, an old 403b. If you work for a municipality, you might have a 457 plan. If you work for the federal government, you might have a thrift savings plan. And you also might have these that you've rolled over previously into traditional IRAs. So that's at least going to create one bucket, full of assets. The other portion of dollars, which I mentioned, are Roth. So these are known as really Roth-related dollars or post-tax dollars. And what happens is it works very similar to that qualified account, that pre-tax account, except for when you're placing the monies in there, unlike with the qualified account where you typically get a tax deduction by adding those contributions in there, you're not getting that tax deduction, but everything's growing within this account tax-free. So you have the power of compound interest working in your favor, growing tax-free. So this has to be qualified as a Roth account in order to be obviously leveraging this component towards Roth monies and tax-free monies in retirement. You could have this through, if you had like a Roth 401k through an employer, and now you're coming, you're basically coming to the end of your working career, and now you want to leverage this account and roll it over into a Roth IRA. What are all those, total dollar of assets? If let's say you've created, you or your spouse, created Roth IRA accounts, whether that could be one or it could be multiple Roth IRA accounts. This will obviously go into the Roth related bucket. And be mindful that the Roth accounts, when it comes time for retirement and you start pulling out income from these Roth accounts, this is going to go to you tax free as opposed to the qualified accounts, which would be fully taxed. So be mindful what that difference is. Now, lastly, we have the non-qualified account bucket. And ultimately what this is these are, again, post-tax dollars, but rather than the Roth accounts that all the monies will grow tax-free and you can pull your monies out tax-free, with these non-qualified accounts, I want you to think of them as your checking account, your savings accounts. If you have brokerage accounts and they're non-qualified, meaning the post-tax dollars in there, that would be added to your non-qualified bucket. If let's say you have real estate and you want to liquidate that real estate, you want to sell that real estate and now it's going to be liquidated into cash, they'll obviously be going into the non-qualified bucket. Or let's say you sell your business for cash, that's obviously going to be sitting in the non-qualified bucket. So, ultimately, what this first step is just taking an inventory, taking a step back and saying, okay, how much money do I have in total assets? And then trying to figure out, okay, how can I leverage these monies effectively? The next step, and really a most crucial step, is understanding what your current cash flows are, what your cash flows are going to be throughout retirement. So the most common guaranteed cash flow sources are going to be Social Security income and or pension income. So with Social Security income, the youngest that you could trigger Social Security is going to be at age 62. Now, with some federal employees, they allow, as per their benefits, they could receive some sort of Social Security supplement before that age 62 marker. But just for this, these examples and for the purpose of this video, I'm going to assume that these individuals watching do not work for the federal government and they're just looking to trigger, Social Security income at that age 62 marker. So be mindful if somebody wants to retire at age 60 and maybe they're offered a pension income stream, well, then that's going to be one, stream of income. If they want to retire at age 60, but they're not quite 62 yet, well, then there has to be a laddering strategy created to say, okay, out of these assets that I've already obtained, how much do I need to at least get me for these next 2 years before I could trigger Social Security income and make sure that I'm at least sufficing what could potentially be my expenses throughout retirement. So like as an example, somebody has $1 million of assets and they understand that they have $30,000 of Social Security income coming to them. They have $50,000 of pension income coming to them at age 60. Social Security income at age 62 will be 30,000, but this person has a $100,000 annual income goal starting at age 60. What do they do here? Well, we understand the pension income stream is at least going to take care of half of this, because 50,000 is going to suffice half of that $100,000 expense goal, but now you have a gap of 50 grand. So maybe out of this $1 million, they leave $100,000 into some sort of liquid account that they could pull off income of 50,000 for year one at age 61, and then or age 60, and then $50,000 at age 61 for the second year. And then at age 62, this is when they'll trigger Social Security income to at least suffice 30,000 of what that need is to create an additional strategy going from age 62 until date of death. So that could leverage another laddering strategy in there, maybe going from 62 and then triggering another income source at age 67, or just having all your income streams come to you at age 62. So. And I'm going to now break down, what do I mean by that? How could somebody actually create an income stream and create that sort of income strategy, making sure that you're not utilizing too many dollars in the wrong areas and you're using the precise dollars as per what you're trying to obtain with your goals. And this is something that we deem the three things scenario. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you're probably familiarized with this, but I want to show this topic regarding if somebody wanted to retire at age 60. Now with the three things scenario, what this means is there's three things that every individual needs to figure out before they're retired, or if they're currently retired, how to stay retired forever. The first step is income. The second step is emergency. And the third step is growth/inflation. So what does this mean? Well, income, how much income do you actually need in retirement? So this is where breaking down what your budgeting analysis is, doing an inventory of how much expenses that you have right now, and then what are your expenses going to be throughout your retirement years. So maybe if you're age 55, and you might have X amount of dollars of expenses, but then at age 60, these expenses are going to be less. What exactly is that difference? So obviously, if you want to retire at age 60, we do not want to plan for the expenses at age 55. We want to plan for the expenses at age 60. Or maybe, you want to retire at age 60, but then at age 65, you're going to no longer have a mortgage expense because your mortgage is paid off at that point. So that could be a decrease of your expenses. So there's a combination of just taking an inventory of what your budgeting analysis is, understanding exactly what those expenses are, and then also incorporating the pace of inflation, a cost of living adjustment within your expenses as well. So when fully breaking down this step one income, first we want to understand what our current cash flows are between Social Security income and pension income, and then we want to know what our expenses are. So if you're trying to retire at age 60, what are your income sources? And then we want to make sure that this is greater than or equal to what your expenses are. If there's a gap, meaning if you have more expenses than what your income is, then obviously we need to suffice this gap. Whatever it takes, so based on whatever your assets are, the total value of those assets and those different qualifications, whether they be in a pre-tax retirement account, a Roth account, or a non-qualified account, would also come into play with how you leverage these monies effectively. So obviously, if you're able to net more monies in a Roth account, that could be a more effective route for your retirement savings. So like if you're taking $100,000 from a Roth-related account in retirement, and we understand that there's no taxes on these monies, well, then you're going to be able to walk away with exactly $100,000. Versus if you took $100,000 from a qualified account and you're in a 30% tax bracket, well, then you're only really able to net $70,000 in that example. So that's all these different things that are put into play. So for your first stage is understanding what the gap is, if there is a gap, and then how to make sure to suffice that gap with another income-related strategy. So after you accomplish this step one with understanding what the gap is, and then based on your total assets, what's the smallest amount of dollars, only as much as necessary to suffice this gap, now you can move on to step two. So if you had, let's say, $1 million of different assets walking into at age 60, and you used up $300,000 for this income related need, well, now this says we have $700,000 remaining. for step 2 emergency, and then step 3 growth inflation. The ultimate goal is to try to have as much money in this growth inflationary bucket as possible. So with emergency, this rule of thumb is an individual should leave about 6 to 12 months of what their expenses are into some sort of liquid account. So if they have, let's say, $100,000 annual income need, they should at least be leaving about $50,000 into their account, for some sort of rainy day fund, an oh my gosh type moment that was to occur. Out of that scenario, if let's say 700,000 was left over, then you go to step 2, you use $50,000 for step 2 into, let's say, a money market account or a savings account or checking account. Well, now that leaves a 650,000 for the step 3, this growth/inflationary need. And then when you get to the step 3, these are really the fun monies. So this is now delving into more of the things that you could have risk towards. So the growth/inflationary goals, so these are more the ancillary dollars, the leftover dollars. Saying, okay, this is what I want to have invested in the market. And if the market's going to be ebbing and flowing, that's not really going to matter because I already have my safety net of my income streams already covered. My emergencies already covered, and then these are accounts that you could always pull off of to help combat that inflationary risk. So anytime that your expenses are increasing, you could always utilize the smaller portion to suffice what that increase of the inflation is, and also leave monies aside that are just growing for potentially a legacy play, potentially for a vacation related need. So it's understanding what do you see as your ideal retirement situation. If, let's say, between age 60 to age 70, you want to travel the world, well, then, you might require more monies in this growth/inflationary bucket that are going to be leveraged as some liquid cash that you want to plan for these next 10 years to be able to suffice this. It might not be an actual, dire need where on the income planning stage, we want to make sure your bare bones minimum expenses so that you don't have to go back to work by the time you're in your 70s or in your late 60s. This is where the income related expenses and that step 1, has to be covered. Step 2, the emergency, is really for the emergency related need. The growth/inflation could be a little bit more flexible on what you're trying to accomplish. Let's say between age 70 to age 75, maybe you might slow down a little bit and only, want to visit grandkids or just do more local traveling. And then from age 75 going forward, you might want to stay, further in the home or just, deal with doctor's appointments, different things like that. So each individual situation is going to be different. And how we customize this growth/inflationary need is through a couple of different avenues. We want to understand exactly what your risk capacity or what your risk tolerance is, and we leverage different AI softwares to give us a specific risk score for your situation, and then we build out portfolios. So sometimes individuals like to be super aggressive, and they like to leverage investments, such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever that case is, or they could have a portion of those dollars, like in my $650,000 example, they could utilize, $250,000 to go towards some sort of, aggressive investments, while, $200,000 is going into some sort of fixed account, while another $200,000 is going into more of a safe accumulation play. And now they basically took what one account was doing and they spliced it up as per what their risk tolerance was. So there's a lot of really neat features that you could do, but the ultimate goal is to try to have as much money left over in that growth inflationary need so you could pull out those monies accordingly, but you don't necessarily have to rely on those monies to at least hit your bare bones minimum expenses. So that's just the generic concept of everything regarding the three-thing scenario. What's some of the problems that individuals come into contact with when they're trying to leverage this three-thing scenario? And the first ultimate problem is using the wrong strategies to obtain their specific goals. So like as an example, if somebody's trying to leverage more monies for income or create some sort of income stream, and they're using a super aggressive investment related account that's set up for growth, well, those are two strategies that are not going to maximize the efficiency off of one or the other. So like as an example, if somebody is super aggressive and the market's going to be gaining 20% and then it's going to be losing 20% and it's going to be gaining 15%, it's going to be losing 10%, this could fall victim to something known as sequence of returns risk. Pulling monies from an account or reverse dollar cost averaging, pulling monies from an account that could be hit with fees and also be hit with downward market losses, where you have the power of compound interest that's putting a pressure against this account. So that might not be a good strategy for this income-related need, but it could be a good strategy for the growth and inflationary related needs. So you might want to tone down the amount of investments or the amount of risk that you're taking for this income related strategy, or you leverage an income related product such as a hybrid annuity, an annuity that has an income rider that could at least produce some sort of lifetime income cash flow that you can never outlive, or you and your spouse can never outlive. So that's using the smallest amount of dollars only as much as necessary towards this step, using the smallest amount of dollars only as much as necessary towards step 2, the emergency, and then being able to leverage the growth/inflationary need. As an example, you don't want to use an income-related strategy if you're trying to grow your monies and try to have as much astronomical growth as possible with these discretionary dollars. This is where other individuals make that mistake, and they say, okay, well, I understand I could receive X amount of dollars in cash flow. Let's say if they have $1 million account, and they understand that the top product line or the top income-related strategy can produce them 10% cash flow, which is $100,000. If they use the full $1 million, would be $100,000 of lifetime income streams every year. If let's say their gap is only 30 grand, well then they should only break down the portion of dollars in this example. 300,000 should only be leveraged towards that strategy. Well, you have 700,000 of the remaining monies that could be leveraged for emergency and that growth related need. And now that's maximized to their specific lane. So, an emergency, it might be better to put that into a savings account, checking account, money market account, just something that's liquid cash, that's not susceptible to downward market losses, is not susceptible to any sort of income-related restrictions. And then the same thing with the growth/inflation. So this is where you could really go, and there's a whole multitude of things when you get up to this stage where you're trying to leave the bulk of your monies to say, I want to be super aggressive, I want to be super conservative, et cetera, et cetera. What you don't want to do is use an income-related strategy for this inflation/growth-related need, or use this income-related strategy for this emergency-related need. Just like you don't want to leave too much money in savings and money market accounts, because you're never going to be able to beat that pace of inflation, and you're not going to let your dollars grow properly. So that might be tilted better towards the growth inflation. And just like before, you don't want to use this aggressive investment related strategy for an income related need, because then it will limit your chances of success of being able to produce that cash flow to suffice that gap throughout retirement. So there's a lot of things that are working all in conjunction with one another. Kind of think of it like an overall puzzle piece, that the income you want to make sure is maximized, the emergency you want to make sure is maximized, and then the growth you want to make sure is maximized, so that everything works, all within each other. Lastly, I want to go over an example and show you how somebody could take a large account, or basically their aggregated assets, and how to make sure that you're splicing them up properly, following within this 3-thing scenario, and then also taking a step further with what we trademarked known as the retirement diet plan. But let's say if we have an individual that's age 58, he's looking to retire at age 60, has $700,000 of assets comprised of qualified Roth accounts and non-qualified accounts. We understand that he has Social Security income that's going to be triggered at age 62. That's going to equal $30,000. And he's also eligible for a pension at age 60 of $40,000. After doing all of his budgeting analysis, we understand that his expenses in retirement, meaning at age 60, is going to be $80,000. So now let's look at the 30,000-foot view. We know that 700,000 are the different assets. He's currently age 58. He has these monies that he could go start planning on today to retire at this age 60 marker. What is the goal that he has to hit? Well, at age 60, he needs $80,000. This is the goal. When we're looking at this income-related strategy, age 60, what is his Social Security income? Well, Social Security income cannot kick in until age 62. So now we have to rely solely on the pension income, which only produces $40,000 at age 60. So $40,000 starting at age 60, he's going to fall victim of a gap of 40 grand from age 60 and 61. $40,000 at age 60, $40,000 at age 61. When he hits age 62, he's going to be able to produce an additional cash flow of $30,000. So $30,000 plus the $40,000 pension at age 62 will bring income streams of $70,000. Well, then starting at age 62, he's going to have a $10,000 gap that's sitting there. So this is ultimately what we want to try to plan for. If we're trying to set up an income-related strategy, first off, we have to create a laddering strategy to produce $40,000 of income. So that could be as simple as saying, okay, this 58-year-old, you could put into a conservative investment-related account that's just going to grow. It's not going to really ebb and flow with the market, but we have to at least make sure that there's $80,000 that's set aside in this account that's going to be utilized at this person's age 60 for 40 grand, and then at age 61 for 40 grand. So then that would liquidate the account within those 2 years. So this could be set up with account number 1. Account number 2 could be set up with, let's say, a hybrid annuity that would produce a cash flow of 100,000. So we understand with account number 1, out of the 700,000, it cost 80 grand to set up this account number 1. Maybe to produce this $10,000, it's going to require account number 2 to be set up in a hybrid annuity, and that's going to cost $150,000 to produce that 10,000. So out of the 700,000, we deduct 80,000, we deduct 150,000, and that leaves approximately $470,000 remaining for this step 3, this step 2 emergency, and then the step 3 growth/inflationary need. So if we understand that their expense is about $80,000, is $470,000 remaining. Maybe an individual could take 6 to 12 months, so maybe take another $70,000 and put that into a money market account. This is going to be account number 3. And now you have $400,000 remaining to suffice their growth/inflationary need. So maybe, at age 60, 62, this expense might be $80,000, but then at age 65, that could be $82,000, could be $84,000, $85,000, and that will constantly be increasing with the pace of inflation, with the cost of goods and services increasing. So with this sort of account, maybe we splice it up into 4 separate accounts. $100,000 that's super aggressive, that's going to be keeping up with the pace of inflation. Another $100,000 that could be left as a type of legacy, as a type of death benefit to loved ones. Another $100,000 that's set up for a fixed related account with a bank product, insurance related product. Another $100,000 that could be set up for a safe accumulation related account. So basically what we did was we took a $700,000 worth of assets, and let me clear up the screen, and we tried to suffice their goals. So we have $700,000 of original assets. We took account number 1, which was $80,000, sitting into a liquid account that's going to be triggered from ages 60 to 62. So really just for those next 2 years, that's going to suffice step 1, account number 1. Account number 2 is going to be $150,000 that we placed in there when this individual is age 58, so it's a 4-year deferral. At age 62, this is going to produce a $10,000 cash flow. It might cost $150,000 as an example for that step number 2, that account number 2. So that takes care of that one. Step number 3 is sitting in a money market account, just liquid cash in case of an oh my gosh moment was to occur. That's sitting at $70,000. And now we have accounts number 4, 5, 6, and 7. Let's say if you're splicing up evenly $100,000 a piece, and this will be set up for step 4. So you're taking one slew of, or one combination of aggregated assets of 700,000, and now you're creating 4 different steps with it. And really, you could have multitude of 7 different accounts. You could only have 2 accounts. You could have 7 different accounts. You could have 10 different accounts. It's really, there's so many ways to kind of slice up this pie to make sure that everything's being maximized. This is being maximized as a laddering strategy. Step 2 is being maximized for a lifetime income stream to suffice that gap and to give you at least that supplemental cash flow as a nice safety net. Step 3 is set up for a nice, emergency related need. And then step 4 is really being maximized for that growth/inflationary need. So I hope that all that makes sense. If you found value in this video and you would like to speak to a specialist more regarding your situation, if let's say you don't want to retire at age 60, but you want to retire at age, say, 58 or 62 or 65 or whatever that case might be, feel free to give our 1-800 number a call. It's 1-800-566-1002. Just reference this video so that we can make sure that the correct advisor will be set up for an appointment with you guys. Also, an easier way would be going directly to our website. And this is afossefinancial.com or retiresharp.com. And you'll have a little pop-up. You can scroll all the way down to basically set up an appointment that works best, the best day and time for you. Get directly up on our calendar. You can hit the contact button and the calendar will pop up. We just added this mechanism onto our website, which allows you to do a live chat with us. So if you want to speak to us at any point in time, it can be mornings, nights, holidays, weekends, whatever that case might be. All you do is just input your name, your email, and you start the conversation. I'll make sure that you're able to speak with a live, with a live rep, and then also be able to get you set up with the date and time as per, what your needs are. Lastly, I hope you found value in this video. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Retire Sharp, so you could have access to the most updated videos. And hit the like button, leave a question, leave a comment, and we'll be sure to respond the best that we can. But thank you very much, and look forward to speaking with you guys.